Good afternoon, everyone, for all of those that are in Europe, and good morning for the ones that are in the US, and good evening for the ones that are joining from Asia. My name is Fedra. I work for the Stockholm Environment Institute, and I'm very happy to have you here in our panel session on the role of municipal governments in sustainability transitions, research and experimentation. The plan is that we will have a session for about an hour. And I'm very happy to have with me on the panel, Linda Bell, Program Director for Mistra and Formas, Olga Kordas, Director of Viable Cities, it's a Swedish strategic innovation program, and a research leader of urban transitions and urban analytics at KTH, Swedish Technical University, and then also Anne-Marie Maas, who's an artist and involved in European projects. We have, as I said before, about an hour for us today. So I will be providing some introduction in the next 5 minutes or so. And then we will share with you the findings of the research that I carried out together with my colleagues, Yulia Yukiahu and Veni Ara. We will try to make this interactive. So we have foreseen a quiz using Mentimeter. So please take out your smartphones if you have one. There will be a QR code that you can scan, or go to menti.com on your internet, and we will be sharing questions shortly. Then about 5 minutes before the end, we will do some concluding remarks. And then we will aim to close at 5:45. A little bit of background into our research. So we work for the Stockholm, well, I work for the Stockholm Environment Institute together with two of my colleagues. And we were awarded funding by Viable Cities, the Strategic Innovation Program, in 2019 to look at sustainability in 9 Swedish cities and how they can finance their transition plans. And so as part of that, we reviewed how these cities are engaging with research and innovation projects. And so I say 9 Swedish cities. There's a map over there that shows them in alphabetical order. It's Gothenburg, Linköping, Lund, Malmö, Nacka, Örebro, Östersund, Västerås, and Vellinge. So we picked these cities because they issued green bonds before 2020. So a green bond is a labeled financial instrument. And so we made the assumption that municipal governments that issue green bonds, they are more front runners when it comes to sustainability, and they're more eager to engage with networks that are not the traditional network of a municipal government. So they work with private investors, with banks, and so on and so forth. So we thought they might also focus more on research and innovation. And then we also looked at 4 Swedish funding organizations. So they are Formas, Vinnova, the Swedish Energy Agency, and Forte. So Formas is the Swedish Research Council for Sustainable Development. They award about 1.5 billion Swedish crowns a year, or that's about 150 million euro. Forte is the Swedish Research Council for Health, Working Life and Welfare, and they award about 700 million SEK or 70 million euro per year to research projects. The Swedish Energy Agency, or Energimyndigheten, they support municipal governments with advisory services, but they also do research projects. And then we have Vinnova, so that is the Swedish Innovation Agency. They're the largest funder. They issue about 3 billion SEK per year, or 300 million euro. We picked Formas, Vinnova, and the Swedish Energy Agency also for another reason, is that they collaborate in 17 programs that are of national interest for Sweden. Viable Cities is one, but they also have other programs that look at priority areas for the Swedish national government. So what did we do? We collected the projects that these 4 funders awarded to these 9 cities, either as lead or as part of the consortium. And so we did an analysis of what projects have been awarded, who was in the network, how large are the networks, how much funding was distributed, and what kind of topics are these municipal governments focusing on. If you have any questions for our panelists while we go through the presentation, please feel free to ask them in the chat. We will do our best to answer them towards the end of our panel discussion today. So I will now go over to a little quiz that we prepared. If my slide moves, that is, yeah. This is my first question. Please go to menti.com and use the code 14295713. Or if you have a smartphone, there's a QR code which you can scan, and then it should open normally the Mentimeter. And so looking across these 4 funders and these 9 cities, we saw that in 2011, 13 projects were awarded with one of the cities in the consortium. In 2012, we had 23 projects already. In 2013, 34. In 2014, 49. And in 2015, also 49. So the question is, how many projects were awarded in 2016? Lower than 49? Answer A. Answer B, 49. Answer C, between 50 and 75. And answer D, over 75. I will go to the quiz. And so this should be updating as we go. So as you vote for your answer, we will see what you're thinking. And we'll give you minutes to work. The information. So we have one answer that says 49, 3 that says between 50 and 75, 1 over 75 projects, okay, so it appears that people think, no one thinks less than 49, but I would say probably it would be 50 projects would be the consensus answer. Going to our results then, so the answer was C, which is what most people voted for, is between 50 and 75. Actually, in 2016, 58 projects were awarded. So you see on the top a graph with the projects awarded, organized per funder. So green is Vinnova, the Swedish Innovation Agency. Then we have SEA, stands for the Energy Agency. Forte is the Health and Working Life Research Council, and Foremost is the Council for Sustainable Development. So what do we see? We see quite an exponential increase in projects. We had only 13 projects in 2011. And overall, over the 10 years, a total of 452 projects were awarded. The total budget of these projects is 1.7 billion Swedish crowns, or 170 million euro. We also see, whereas in 2011, you only have 2 funders. Vinnova, the Innovation Agency, funds 12 projects, and the Energy Agency only funds 1. We see by 2016, we also have Forte that awards funding. And then by 2019, the Swedish Research Council for Sustainable Development, Foremost, also starts awarding projects. And they have 8 in total. Forte had 7. The Swedish Energy Agency had about close to 50. And Vinnova had 392 projects in total awarded. If you look at the bottom graph, this is the project awarded to the different municipalities. So this is municipality in the lead or as part of the consortium. And so we see the top line there in blue, that's Gothenburg. So in 2011, they only had 1 project, and overall they had over 170 projects which they joined in this project duration. They're followed by Malmö. Malmö is in 138 projects, and then Lund is in quite a few. And Vellinge is the only municipality that is only joining as a partner in the consortium, but is not leading any of the projects. Now I will ask my panelists to interpret some of these results or to comment upon these. And so the first question I would like to ask is to Olga, given her experience leading the Viable Cities program. So we see that municipal governments are more involved in research and experimentation. So does this match also with your experience? How have you seen the field of research and innovation change over the years?
Yeah, exactly. So it's totally in line with what I see, both working with Swedish municipalities, but also working on European level with Horizon Europe and the other programs. And I believe that this is in line with a shift towards the so-called transformative innovation policy of our government and many European governments. So before, like a start of year 2000, we had the innovation policies, which was so-called systems innovation, and it was more like focus on how could we generate knowledge and also innovative solutions in order to be competitive in Europe and globally. So global competitiveness was a very kind of strong motivators to fund research and innovation. And then the shift towards transformative innovation policy means that we start to think about societal challenges as Agenda 2030, as a Paris Agreement. So, and then research funds is targeting those kind of societal challenges. So, and then idea is that it's not enough to give funds to pure research or innovation. Also, it's not enough to do technological innovation, but we want to have kind of more system level solutions to meet societal challenges. And because of this transformative innovation policy, we started to talk much more about the disciplinary research and also role of non-academic knowledge when we are doing our research. And with that, we've got many projects that were first kind of targeting so-called triple helix, which is public authorities, industry and academia, and also recently so-called quadruple helix, where we recognize the role of civil society organizations in research, and especially when we are talking about sustainable urban development. So that's why when we are reading the calls from many different agencies, whether it's Horizon on the European level or Swedish national agencies, everybody are talking about transdisciplinary research, and we are also talking about involvement of societal stakeholders. So doing research with society and not for society is a kind of a motto of this development. So yeah, so I believe that this statistics is totally in line with what we see both in Sweden and in Europe, in many other countries as well.
Thanks, Olga. Linda, you work for a funding agency, and you worked previously also with Vinnova, the Swedish Innovation Agency. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience? What has changed in the funding landscape? We see now traditional research councils awarding funding also to municipal governments. What has brought that on?
Yes, thank you, Feder. Thank you for an interesting introduction. I think I can just start by basically just seconding Olga Korda's I think very accurate description of the changing funding landscape, because there is an increased understanding of how complex the sustainability transition actually is, and that we're not facing perhaps so much of a research gap as more of an action gap. And when we're talking about the action gap, then we need to have some local engagement on the ground. And of course, the municipalities, and also, as was mentioned here briefly, obviously agents like the civil society will have to take an increasingly bigger role in that action gap. So I think from the funding perspective, and I can say that from my experience from Vinnova, already I think about a bit more than 10 years ago, Vinnova really started a big transition, trying to involve more of the public sector innovation and integrating that into all these strategic innovation programs. Also, that Olga is now leading one of these programs. But there also been some challenges on the way there, because there's maybe not always it's not always easy for a municipal local government to understand the kind of language that we're using within research innovation, to understand all the concepts that we're using, and to bridge then this gap between perhaps the academic world and the world of the local government. I think is a very important role, where also we as research funders should do even more to kind of lower the thresholds for the local actors to actually come in and contribute. And I think it's a very important step that what we try and do at Mistra, where I work now, is to also involve the public actors and the civil society actors even at the very early stage, before we even write the funding calls, to have the stakeholder involvement at a very early stage, so that there's a needs-driven approach to the local governments and the municipalities in this case.
Great. Thanks, Linda and Olga, for this very insightful comments, which leads us very nicely to our second quiz question, which is an analysis of the consortia constellation. So going to my next slide. It's question 2. It's again a Mentimeter question. So at the bottom, please go to menti.com and use the codes 14295713 for the people that need to join, or scan the QR codes there. And so we analyzed the projects in terms of number of partners per project. And so in 2011, we see that the average project consists of 6.8 partners. So in 2012, larger, 8.3. 2013, again, smaller focused. In 2015, we have very large projects with 11.7 partners on average. So the question is, how large is the average consortium in 2016? A, smaller than 12, B, 12, C, between 12 and 15, and D, over 15 partners. I will go to Mentimeter to the second question. So how large is the average consortium in 2016? I have 3 answers so far. 2 people think between 11 and 15 partners. 1 person thinks over 15 partners. Right, so the most answered is between 11 and 15 partners. 2 people believe that the partnerships have grown, 3 quite substantially to over 15, and 1 believes they're at the same as 2015 of 11.7 partners. Let me now go back to sharing. No one guessed this right. The consortia have actually become smaller again in 2016. So 2015 was an exceptional year, very large groups, or very many organizations in all the projects. The average in 2016 was 7.5, but over the 10-year period, 2011 to 2020, we have 8.4 partners. So if you look at the trends here, we see that the consortia have become larger. So initially they were 6.8 partners in 2011 to 8.4. So it's about 1.5 partners more, 1 to 2 on average. In the graph, we display the budgets per project and per partners. We removed outliers. There were a couple of large grants after 2015, a lot of projects with also many partners. I think we had 1 project with 59 partners. So we removed that one in this graph. And then we also removed a couple of projects that were very long in duration, 73 months to be exact. So we removed those also. And so this graph shows average funding per project and per project partner. And so the top line shows that the average funding or the bottom line in orange shows that the average budget per partner was reduced from 3.3 million SEK in 2011 to so that's about 330,000 euro, to 454,000 Swedish crowns in 2020. So projects of about 45,000 euro per partner. The projects have not become longer. So they were 19 months on average in 2011. In 2020, they're 20 months, so not a big difference. But if we then look at the constellation of the consortia, so in 2011, when we had about 7 partners, about 4 were industry, or 3 were industry, 2 were government, and 1 was academia. Very little civil society involved there on average. When we now look at 2020, from the 8 partners, 5 would be industry, 2 would be government, 1 would be academia, and again, very little civil society. So if you look at the difference between 2011 and 2020, it is academic partners have gone down, industry has gone up, government has lost a little as well, and civil society has remained very minimal involved in the project. So as Olga said before, the triple helix model, which is collaborations between government, industry, and academia, is what we see in the research funding still up to 2020. And we do not see any involvement or very limited involvement of civil society. Now I'm going back to my panel for some further commentary on our findings. So Anne-Marie, I'll first come to you. So you have been involved in research projects yourself. You're an artist. You have started up a lot of initiatives on sustainability within the city of Brussels. So seeing these results that civil society and artists are underrepresented in research projects, does this match with your experience as well? And like, what would you say, why is that?
Yeah, and thank you, Petra, for inviting me here in this discussion that I joined as a point of view of an artist. So I think it's very strange in my eyes, because of course, all the projects where I join in are projects with a big artistic involvement. And so it's very strange that to see that the percentages are still that low in an overall landscape. In my opinion, this is maybe why they involve more and more artists in these projects, just to build more the bottom up with the civil society, build the projects more bottom up and involve more the citizens in the projects. In my case, we did this often via citizen science or forms of citizen science in a very broad view. For example, urban gardens, urban farms, but as well working on biodiversity, starting with honeybee colonies, for example, farming in the city, all this kind of biodiversity things that can be measured. We have now a big project running in Brussels on clean air, for example. All these are collaborations with governments, academia, a little bit industry, but very little, but most of all, actually, civil society, yeah, the citizens. So in all the projects I was involved in, which were under Horizon 2020, Creative Europe, or also local Belgian programs, as one is called innovative partnerships. In all these things, the citizens were involved, actually. Yeah. So, but this is more or less a recent development, I think. Yeah.
I think maybe someone would also like to comment. So the EU just launched a new knowledge center for citizen engagement and participation. Do you think this is a step in the right direction? And like, is it something that I think should funding agencies and governments collaborate more?
Is this question directed to me?
If you want to answer, Annemarie, feel free.
I think it's very well, very good initiative that they launched at the GRC. So this new hub for observing the participation. I think, GRC is there just to monitor what citizens need and monitor communication between academia and politicians and citizens. So I think it's a good case to put more attention on this. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Annemarie. If I could ask another question. So this one is for Linda and Olga. So we see increased complexity in the partnerships. The projects are not longer, but it's more partners and less budget per partner, which of course can create tension. I work for a research institute myself, and we also tend to at times go for a lot of partners, a large consortium. What has brought that on? Is there an impression that you need to collaborate with a lot of stakeholders to be successful in the funding, or what would you say is the trend there?
If I can start here, I think this is again, I think, been an ongoing kind of trend for some time, also at the European level. I mean, we've seen in the program, the 7th framework program, even the 6th framework program, larger and larger consortia, which bring upon a pretty big administrative burden also for the management of the programs. This is also, I think, can be a big challenge for the local level, because they may not have in a smaller city in Sweden or Belgium, for that instance, quite the manpower and the expertise to actually take part in a leading role in such a consortium. But I think it is brought upon. It's brought on by several different reasons, but one I think is as I mentioned before, the kind of inherent complexity of speaking now of sustainability, the sustainability challenge. And perhaps this is in some ways for us as funders, and I'm now being quite self-critical, kind of an easy way of showing that we're including everybody. So if you just bring along enough partners in your consortium, then somebody there should be able to do everything. But I think this is we do have reason to be to reflect upon this and to really consider, because I think when also the budgets get smaller per partner, then of course many, at least the academic participants, will have to have many ongoing parallel projects and programs, and this is going to be quite a fragmented situation also. So, you know, if we consider actually solving the sustainability issues, this may not be the right way forward. So maybe we as funders, I think, should think again and perhaps reconsider the way we set up some of these programs. And I think that also goes for the European Commission.
Thanks, Linda. Olga, would you like to also comment?
Yes, I feel that, so first of all, I do believe that one doesn't fit all. So I do believe that depending on the question and the aim and the impact to be reached, so we need to have different kinds of projects. And I think, unfortunately, I also believe, as Linda, well, we see that now we try to do kind of standard settings, whatever we are applying for, making calls for, we are doing standard settings. And for some of the action, we need to have more of the partners on board, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. For others, we can have much smaller consortium. And then also, I believe, I'm not sure, so about this analysis, because so I believe that the number, like we have a higher number of partners, but I'm not sure that kind of if we have key partners, then still I would say that the budget is not divided equally. So I know that within Viable Cities we have very many projects with many partners, but for example, industrial partners are bringing money or their own time, so they not request money from public, so public money or the grant money. So it's not so black or white, I would say. I do believe that it's kind of the bad point in this is that, I mean, trying to have many partners because in order to optimize the chances to get the project or get funding, this is a not good strategy. And this I also agree with Linda that, I mean, it should not be the project logic. The number of partners is not the kind of a criteria for many projects to kind of to be funded, but those partners who are necessary and also who are relevant, and also in the case that we have meaningful participation of those partners, not just like having sleeping partners along with partners on the list.
If I just may add something, thank you, Olga. Those are very, I think, were very relevant comments. I also think that we as research funders and who design future programs and so on should also bear in mind the ability to design these future programs with some sort of flexibility, because, and I know that there have been some such attempts, for instance, well, the strategic innovation programs have that logic in them, and also the challenge-driven innovation that you mentioned, Fedra, before. We also at Mistra have the ability or the possibility for the key partners to bring in additional partners, maybe for a short time in the project to contribute with something. And I think this is also when we now later on in this discussion discuss the civil society. I think this is actually a very useful thing to be able to bring along actors who may not be able to engage in a 3-year or 5-year program or something, but can come in and do something very important at a certain time in the project and then move out again. So that flexibility, I think we should be working at as funders even more than today.
Yeah, I would like to comment on that. I think you're completely right. And for the civil partners, I think it's extremely hard that sometimes the administrative part is too difficult, too complex, and that it takes too much of their time. So I think being more flexible and just like working in such a way as you propose right now can be a solution to involve more easily these people from the bottom up.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I would agree with all the comments that you gave. I think the ability to commit to a 3, at times 4-year project, it's not a given for many organizations. So I think it's definitely something to reflect upon. I also take away, so in our analysis of the average funding, it was per partner. But one of the things that would be interesting to do is to look at the funding per type of organization. So in these large consortia, does most of the funding go to the lead and then it's token participation, or is it an equal split between everyone on the project? So something to still do in our analysis. I will then go to my final quiz question, and I should note it's a new Mentimeter code and a new QR code. So for those of you who have participated so far, please check the code again. And so this is around the topics that are being funded. So what do you think is being funded the most? So there has been a 1.7 billion SEK distributed, 452 projects, different funders, all the municipalities are involved. So what do you think is funded the most? Sectors you can mention, like transport or agriculture, or you could also mention themes like digitalization, product development. etc. So menti.com with the code at the bottom 66288067 or a QR code. I will go to the Menti answers. I'll give you a minute to respond. This is a word cloud, so whatever you type, it will appear, and the more it gets mentioned, the bigger it should be in size. I have 6 participants here, and I am admitting more people to the room as we speak. 7 now. And so I believe both of them, I don't know whether it's because I wrote the words on the slide, that's what you're put forward, transport and digitalization, but we also have infrastructure, biodiversity, health, and energy efficiency so far. I would say most of them are mentioned, the most mentioned digitalization and transport, given their side. We now also have agriculture, pop-up climate change adaptation, good one. And energy efficiency. Great, I will give you the results of our analysis. Basically, many topics are being funded. There's 452, so we coded these projects across 10 sectors and 10 keywords. And so the sectors are arts, recreation and tourism, food systems, care, education and well-being, government, so municipal government's own functioning, climate and resource efficiency, so this includes mitigation, the circular economy, adaptation, labor and economic opportunities, so this includes this includes actually a research project that is looking at trade unions, the construction industry, so this is about building materials, also property owners, housing, transport and mobility, so this is anything to do with public transport, electrification of vehicles, transport systems. Then we have energy systems, so this is about the production of renewable energy, phasing out fossil fuels, and so on. And then we have urban planning and green spaces, so this is about green roofs, more parks, and designing cities with the inclusion of people. So this is a trend historically over time. So in 2011, only 5 sectors were funded. And so by 2015, we see projects in all the sectors. So more projects. And then the bottom graph shows the breakdown according to different teams. So as teams, we had product development, like, for example, making a recovering nutrients and making a new product. Biochar, for example, was an example. We have procurement, so becoming better at circular procurement, for example. We had metrics and tools about measuring the climate impact of new products. We had inclusion and citizen participation, so projects around migrants, children, refugees, but also designing policy within cities. We had digitalization, AI and automation, and behavioral change. And so what did we find is that in terms of the top 3, most funded and most projects is climate related research, which could be due to the fact that we have the FORMAS, the Research Council for Sustainable Development, and the Swedish Energy Agency, but quite a few of the Vinnova projects, so the Swedish Innovation Agency, also focus on developing new products for the circular economy, developing business models that would work, and so on and so forth. 470 million SEK was awarded to projects here. So about 25% of the total envelope. Second most projects not funded is care, education and welfare. So 83 projects overall, or about 20%. But they only received 12% of the total envelope, 212 million. And interestingly, all the projects, or the majority, are focusing on digitalization. This is designing new apps for elderly, apps for medication, things like that. Digitalization in schools, online learning, and so on and so forth. And then the third most mentioned sector is transport and mobility. So this is about e-vehicles, public transport, sharing cars, and so on. And here the focus is also on digitalization, business development, and AI and automation, so automated vehicles and the likes. Many topics, many focus areas, quite complex. If you then add on to that, also the fact that projects have become larger and with less budget per partner, it could be quite challenging for municipal governments. So I now have a couple of questions again for my panel, and I would like to pick up on the role of civil society. So we saw in the previous quiz question that civil society is less than 3% of the calls of the consortia. And if you look at what is being funded the most, or has most projects, it's care, education, well-being. We talk about digitalization, inclusion, and participation. So why is civil society not taking part more? What is, Olga, you mentioned before, it's not only technical innovation, but it's with the society and not for the society. So Anne-Marie, can you comment on this? Do you find this also quite strange that they're not so much involved?
Yeah, because it's something that involves them all, of course. So it's super important. So it's very strange that they're not really involved. I think that it's a question of being encouraged. And personally, from my position, being a partner in this kind of projects and working with large groups of citizens, I have to say that all the citizens that I work with, they are super enthusiastic. They give themselves completely to work in these projects. But then indeed, when you see the larger overview, how many do they represent? And the outcome of your study is that they represent only a very small percentage of the total civil society. I don't understand this. I have the impression that we are really in some kind of transition, in a change. I have the feeling that all the people I work with and that are around me are really concerned by all this, especially climate and everything that involves climate, but also all these inclusion things and everything. So everybody is busy with it. I cannot give, well, I have a bad view on society, I think, but I don't know why it's only 3% if I see your outcome.
I must say, I also find it quite strange, also, especially because we also have some behavioral change projects, focus that look at, the modal shift from using your car to using public transport. So I was wondering also, Olga, you raised your hands. Maybe you also want to come in and comment here.
Yeah, I think that this is a big challenge, of course. So from one side, we have funds to support, to solve those, or to meet the challenges of society, but also the logic behind the fund and all the administration and also all kind of the funding flows, they are not actually designed for civil society organization to participate. So we we have experience of many cases where civil society organization could not participate because either they find it very kind of heavy on administration, either they don't have skills, because I mean skills to apply or skills to report. So it might be also that they don't have interest in the report and administrate, but to do something more creative. So sometimes they have hard times, even like they don't have the kind of organization number to claim for funds. I mean, there are so many things that, like when we have when we created Logic to fund research innovation, the Logic was created firstly for research, for universities, research institutes. Then also this Logic was further developed to industry. Then also for public authorities, and it's not always easy in this constellation. But I mean, just if we think about civil society organization, I think that it's least developed. So this is one of the reasons why. Then also, I find it interesting for many projects, its question is that if municipalities and other partners don't have experience how to involve civil society organizations, they don't have real experience of collaborate, then it's not so easy to create consortium and partnerships either. So I think there are a lot of barriers there, but then within viable cities, we require, like last call, we requested that all consortiums should have civil society organizations on board. And then we've got so many questions. I would say that the most of the questions from consortiums that were led by municipalities was, Olga, why do you do it for us? This for us. I mean, how we involve those kind of civil society organizations? Should we involve a football team, or I mean, who are those people? So I feel it was very challenging, but all the consortium who applied, they managed to do it. And now I think that we need to learn our lessons. I mean, how we redesigned the calls for proposal. I think that Linda had a brilliant ideas that might be so kind of bringing some of the partners on board, like part-time or some special conditions. It's one of the solutions. It should be other solutions as well. And what are the good practices and what are the solutions that was kind of could facilitate participation of civil society organization. And I have some hope for this new Bauhaus, new European Bauhaus concept. Maybe this one could help us like to use this creativity, design, art, aesthetics for like sustainable urban development. But we need to find other forms of funding and other forms of projects, and also build the experiences and capacity of different actors to involve civil society organizations, and maybe also capacity of civil society organization to apply for the funds that are more suited to their purposes.
Anne-Marie, you wanted to come in.
Yes, I wanted to comment on this. Like, I don't think that there is a lack of projects or that people can apply for, or organizations can apply for. There are many, much too many, actually. I think organizations cannot find it often, and they don't have the time to do this, because when you talk about civil society organizations, it's more or less people that work in the field. They want to do something, really. They want to come up with something, and it's not administrators. And I think this is the biggest burden, is the administration. First of all, of the application. Secondly, at the end of the project, like with all the administration again, you have to give a big part of your budget to accountants. I think this is the biggest thing why a lot of organizations are not really involved in it. No, I think goodwill, there is enough goodwill. That's not the problem, I think.
So too many administrative hurdles for them to be able to join effectively. And on Olga's comments, it's indeed a sports association was part of someone's network That's one of the civil society partners that's involved. If I can, I see that we have some questions in the panel, but I would just first like to ask one more final question to this panel. So if you look at the topics that people are involved in, is there any gap or anything that you say, oh, I wish we would fund more of this, or we should fund more of that? I can go back a slide if that works. So most funding for climate and resource related research, followed by transport and mobility, followed by care, education, and well-being. So if you say, oh, if I had a magical envelope, I would award funding there because I think this is a priority for cities.
I think I'm not surprised to see the list, both because which agencies are funding funders, but also I think that if we are talking now about what are those kind of urgent societal challenges, is basically climate change is very urgent one. So we need to mitigate climate change very fast. That's why I think that this is very clear goal. And then we know also that cities are playing very high, like very important roles, being, emitting a lot of CO2 emissions. So this is kind of not surprising. Then I believe also the transport and mobility is both, also in terms of climate, I would say that it's also very much connected to climate change. So it's both, so we need to find solutions to mobility challenge in terms of also kind of sustainability and well-being of people living in cities, but also in terms of climate change. And then welfare and a good life as in viable cities, good life for everybody within planetary boundaries. So then like the care, welfare, and education are cornerstones. So I'm not surprised that the cities, those are the important challenges by cities, and these are the challenges that are not solved by few research projects. What I want to see more is actually a kind of a portfolio approach, connecting all those things, because it's really, somebody is working on transportation, others on welfare, and those things are interconnected, and also on mobility or climate change has a lot of so we can find solutions that have multiple benefits, and we should look for them. What solutions and what kind of efforts we need to do that are like having multiple benefits towards the climate mitigation, adaptation, welfare, education, school, food. All the things are interconnected, and this is really challenging to find just kind of more holistic or more system level efforts, and funding is not actually designed to meet those more complex challenges. You cannot solve them within 3-year projects, this is for sure. So the short-termism and kind of this kind of limited funding is a big challenge, because we don't learn. We don't have time and money for reflexive learning and connecting all those different efforts between each other. And then we are missing something there. So I think that this is the biggest challenge. It's not so important like which kind of topics would have more money or less, but how much we learn from them and how well we connect them. This is a challenge that I see.
Yeah. Thank you, Olga. Linda, if you would have a magical envelope.
Yeah, so I kind of do actually, but I think also agreeing with Olga, there are some examples in the past of projects that have managed, I think, in some ways to meet multiple goals of the SDGs. For instance, in one of the same project, there was a a couple of projects in an early portfolio at Vinnova where we had a call called social innovation, where we went away from the technological focus to just focus on basically focusing on the social aspects of innovation, where we got some interesting proposals, one of which I think now has actually become sort of a commercially viable program running, which focused on two big challenges. One was food waste, and the other is social exclusion and long-term unemployment. So we have a commercial company, a food company here in Stockholm, working together with a civil society organization to open certain specific food shops with food that was supposed to be thrown away, that is sold at a very low price, but also in these stores they engage people who are very far away from the from the work market, basically. So they were able to support individuals into to getting a real job, so to speak. So this is one example, I think, of a very nice project. And I think a little bit what Olga was asking. And I also saw in the chat that I got a question about how we, as a funding agency, or in my experience, have worked about the civil society representation. And this is a very urgent issue for us. And I think at Mistra last year, we even had a call that was specifically targeted towards the civil society in the area of climate justice. But we did find it was a bit, we don't have basically the communication channels to find all the relevant civil society organization. And then, as Olga said, of course, there are a lot of outstanding issues when it comes to administration and kind of the mismatch, I think, also partly in language, vocabulary, and what we talk about when we talk about a challenge. Because I think for a civil society organization, sometimes the challenge can just be, to find the 5 volunteers for the event that they have on Saturday. And we're talking at Mistra 8-year perspective in our programs. So again, I think flexibility and maybe to have some kind of seed money function within the program where you can bring in. What I think is good to mention is that there are some lessons to be learned, I think, from the SME participation in research innovation, because there has been a challenge for a long time to bring in startups, very small companies, to get kind of the innovative power of those companies into the research innovation system. And I think there are some systemic lessons to be learned from that trip, that so that journey that has been some experiences that we can use as funders, not to be able to not to have to reinvent everything again. But there are also some unique challenges also for the civil society.
Thanks, Linda. And in the interest of time, Anne-Marie, what would, if you had a magic envelope, or there would be one, what do you think should be funded for cities? You are muted.
Sorry. Then I would like to put more focus on a collaboration of several civil organizations per part of the cities. I think seeing the city as one big whole is too large. I'm thinking of starting from Brussels now, because I know that city. But I would more like to split it up again in the villages that it was once before, and then work with very local organizations, but on the very long term. I think having these projects every time for a specific amount of months, like 2 years, or I think it's better to have it on the longer term. And to continue working with the same organizations. It's less overhead in administration, and I think it would give better results. I would like also to see like these villages more split up, like between living units and then leisure units, more parks and so on, instead of having everything on one spot, as in Brussels, for example. Brussels is considered as a very green city, but it's not true at all, because everything is in one forest. and that forest is on one side of the city, but the other side is not green at all, for example. So I think it's worth to look at this diversification more of the bigger city. And then something that I don't understand as a citizen without car already for 20 years now, that is that why can governments in cities not be more strict on the use of cars? So I'm completely for cities without cars. I think this should be the goal in the near future, that we develop more our public transport. And I don't see the use of cars necessary in cities. Like, we can work out things more with good metros, trains. Of course, it's true in Belgium, trains are too expensive and there are not enough trains and so on. So, but this is something that can be worked on. So the transport problem is for me one of the most one of the main things that we can solve. We have the things in our hands to solve that, I think. The other ones, like climate change and so on, it's more difficult, but there we have to work all together. But so that's my idea: split up the cities a little bit and work on longer terms with the same groups.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie and Linda and Olga, for your participation in the panel. Because we're close to the end, so you touched a little bit upon some of the comments or the questions in the chat. Linda, you answered one from Julia. Alexandra asked about the projectification, so to ensuring longer term engagement or commitment, sustained working versus recurrent project approach. This is what you spoke about, Anne-Marie, to go for longer term projects, more programmatic thinking. And then I think that would tie in nicely with what you mentioned, Olga, also about the importance of learning. Working for a research institute myself, we do quite a few projects, but so you always go for the next funding round. And so at times they overlap and you do not have sufficient time to reflect and think about, okay, what have we learned and how can we build on this to do even better what's the actual gap here that we're trying to fill, and where would the added value come from going forward. I also take back from today's session the importance of making it administratively less hard. From a research institute who applies for funding, this would be great, because we apply for a lot of funding as well. And I hear you on the transportation question, Anne-Marie. Yesterday, the budget for Stockholm was released, and the price of public transport in Stockholm has increased yet again. So it kind of makes you wonder what's the if we want people on public transport, maybe we should make it cheaper, and then people would leave cars. But yeah,
make it free.
I think there was a city in Belgium that tried that for a while, but I don't know whether how successful that was. But something to definitely explore. I note a couple of other questions in the chat, which we will respond via email. So if we could, we will definitely post. We have a conference paper that we will present also with the summary of our findings. So that will also be coming on our website. Thank you so much, panelists and participants, to join in today's sessions. I really appreciate it. It was a bit of a trial with this quiz test, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I am looking forward to the rest of this very interesting program. Thanks, and have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Bye.
Ciao. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.